Good evening, everyone. This is the meeting of the Municipal Land Use Board of the Borough of River Edge for Wednesday, July 26, 2023. The time now is 7:32 p.m. Meeting of the Municipal Land Use Board of the Borough of River Edge is being held remotely and recorded via Zoom due to Borough Council Chambers unavailability and is in compliance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act and associated regulations. Notice of this remote meeting was published in the Bergen Record on October 6, 2022, posted on the front doors of Borough Hall, and posted on the borough's website. The notice included the dial-in and login information necessary for public participation and access to this meeting remotely. A copy of the agenda for this meeting was made available on the borough's website near the posting of the meeting notice and included the dial-in and login information. During the public comment period of this meeting, if you would like to make a public comment, please press the raise hand button on Zoom or dial *9 on your telephone keypad to raise your hand. The board will address you by name or by the last 4 digits of your telephone number. You may mute and unmute yourself by pressing the microphone icon on Zoom or dialing *6 on your telephone keypad. You must state your name and address prior to making a public comment. With that, I will ask Ms. Steinle to call the roll, please.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Mayor,
Present.
Mr. Caslin,
Here.
Ms. Boland,
Here.
Mr. Merman,
Here.
Mr. Pfeffer,
Here.
Mr. Cray,
Here.
Mr. Arkelian. Oh, he's on mute, but I do see him. Councilman Kinigo,
Present.
Mr. Gibbons,
Here.
Mr. Esposito is excused tonight, and Mr. Bastide.
Here.
All right, and Mr. Behrens and Mr. Costa is on his way in as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. A couple of quick housekeeping items before we get moving forward. We're going to have a 10 o'clock curfew this evening for these proceedings. And secondly, on the agenda, the board member comments section, we're going to move ahead of old business. There are a couple of items from prior matters that I want to get on the record, and prior to the mayor and councilman departing this evening, we just want to touch upon those very quickly before moving into the old business section. Our first agenda item this evening for action is the approval of minutes of our meeting from July 12, 2023. Draft of the minutes was circulated to the board prior to this evening's meeting for review. Open it to the board for comments or questions on that draft.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Mr.
I've
Murphy?
reviewed the minutes, which would like to thank Lisa for expediting for this meeting. I'm sure she worked very hard to accomplish that. And I have no comments on what I read. And if nobody else has any corrections or anything, I'll make a motion when you're ready.
Okay, any comments from the remainder of the board? Questions? Okay, Mr. Merman?
Okay, I'll make a motion that the board accept the minutes of July 12th, 2023 meeting.
Okay, thank you, sir. May I have a second?
Second.
I think I heard Mr. Krause. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Do we have any abstentions, Marina?
Abstain.
Yep, Mr. Mayor, Mr.
Abstain.
Caslin, Ms. Boland, and that should be it.
Okay. The ayes carry, the minutes are approved. Next on our agenda this evening is completeness review. This is an application for Brian and Shannon Lynch. Property address is 151 Wayne Avenue, block 909, lot 1. Seeking a proposed 2-story home addition plus a deck addition on a corner lot. The application is seeking variance relief for a rear yard setback. It looks like the Lynches have a full crowd here this evening. I see the Lynches. I see Mr. Bernardi. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes.
We also have John Tudor, our architect, here with us.
Okay, great. So for this section of the proceedings, we're just going to review these submissions to determine whether we can move forward with hearing the application this evening. So nothing for you to do at the moment. So Ms. Steinle, I'll turn it to you.
Yes, prior to this meeting, I reviewed the proofs submitted by the applicants and found them to be sufficient for the board to have jurisdiction to hear the application tonight.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Behrens?
Good evening. So the application's for an addition to the existing home. They've submitted the application forms, property survey and architectural plans. So it appears that the application is complete.
Okay, Mr. Costa, any?
Mr. Chairman, all good to go.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Again, just as Tom said, and Marina, it's for a small addition in the back. One variance, I believe, is required. So it's up to you and the board. Go forward.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions, comments from the board as to completeness? Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion on accepting the application as complete.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Busty. Ms. Steinle, when you're ready.
All right, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Ms. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
yes,
Mr. Pfeffer,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Mike, you're
Mr.
muted.
Cray, I think he's muted.
I apologize. Yes.
All right, Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Councilman Kenigo,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Bastide.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Our next item under completeness review this evening is Dark Star Development LLC. The property is 335 Johnson Avenue, block 1405, lot 3. This is for a rehearing and reconsideration of a May 24th denial of application and the required renotice for the rehearing. Ms. Steinle?
Yes, prior to this hearing, I reviewed the proofs submitted by the applicant's attorney for the rehearing and found them to be sufficient for the board to hear this matter tonight.
Okay, Mr. Behrens?
So as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, this is for reconsideration, excuse me, of the application. The applicant has submitted revised plans as well as a summary of what those revisions are. So I believe in the context of, trying to understand what the plan changes are, there's enough for the board to move forward this evening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Behrens. Mr. Costa?
Again, Mr. Chairman, obviously all the letters are in place, the prior resolution, so it's up to the board. I think the board voted already to reconsider it, so it's all up to the board.
Okay,
Everything else can be worked out. Just to put on the record tonight, Director of the DPW, myself, and a few members of the DPW and my staff was down there just trying to figure out what's going on with the sewer system on Johnson. We'll be back out there tomorrow to TV to find out exactly where the pipes are. Apparently either the county or the state or combination of all the above buried the manholes. So we're in motion to find out what's what, where's what, and this has absolutely nothing to do with Mr. Imparato or the application.
okay, thank you for that. Okay, questions, comments from the board on this application for completeness?
Yes, I have a question. This is Bill Kittredge. I'm sorry I got on the call and
Mr. Kitchens, I'm going to just ask you to hold on for a moment. We're not taking action on this right now. We're just determining completeness of the submissions that have been made for the rehearing process.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Any comments from the board as to completeness? Okay, I will look for a motion on this application, please, for completeness.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Busty. Ms. Steinle, when you're ready.
All right, and I'll only call those eligible to vote. Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Ms. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
yes,
Mr. Pfeffer,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
and Mr. Bastide.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We're going to move now into our new business portion of the agenda. Our first item this evening is Brian and Shannon Lynch. Property is 151 Wayne Avenue, block 909, lot 1. Proposed two-story home addition plus a deck addition on a corner lot. Application seeking rear yard setback variance relief. Good evening, folks, once again. Looks like we have the applicant, looks like the applicant's contractor and the architect as well. So before we all get started, I'm going to ask our attorney to swear you in.
If you please raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
I do.
All right, and then could we go around and everyone state their name, spell their last name, provide your address, and then for the experts, provide background to the board as to your licensing and expertise.
My name is Brian Lynch. My last name is spelled Lynch. My address is 151 Wayne Avenue in River Edge, and I'm one of the applicants.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shannon Lynch. Last name is Lynch, Lynch. I live at 151 Wayne Avenue, and I'm one of the applicants as well.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Mark Bonardi, Bonardi. I reside at 324 Taft Road in River Edge. I'm a building contractor, been in the business for 40 plus years.
Thank you.
I'm John Tudor, Tudor. I'm an architect located in Paramus for more than 20 years. I'm licensed in New Jersey since 1993.
All right.
Any questions from the board as to Mr. Tudor's qualifications? Okay. Okay, thanks, everyone. I will turn it over to you at this point. If you could, for the benefit of the board, just give a summary of the proposed additions that you're looking to make to your home and what you're looking to achieve.
Sure. So good evening. Again, I'm Shannon Lynch. We've moved to town in 2015. We really searched for a town that we would call home, and we found that in River Edge. Both my husband and I want to have a community. We don't just like to live somewhere, we want to be part of something. So my husband is one of the coaches in Little League. He's been on the men's softball since we've moved here. I'm on the board of the Cherry Hill PTO as the secretary. I'm also on the board of the women's club for the last 5 years. So we really love this town. We want to be in this town forever. So we've lived here in this house. It's a corner lot, which gave us a lot of property, but unfortunately limits us in terms of making any additions without getting a variance. So fortunately, we have just found out we're going to have another baby in November. And we really need to add an additional bedroom. My husband now works from home most of the time. So our little tiny room that was, an extra room is now his office. So we were talking about expanding our house a little to make a 4th bedroom. So that brings us to the pushing back of our backyard to add a small addition on one of the sides of our backyard to push out our kitchen, which would allow us to rearrange the top floor to add a 4th bedroom. So yeah, I think that's basically.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. Mr. Behrens.
Sure. Good evening. So, as was stated, the application is for an addition in the rear, and it might be helpful if I just share the screen real quick. I'll put up the site plan and, we could run through this real quick so the board can, understand what the situation is. So if you can all see my screen, this is the footprint of the existing home. As was noted, it's a corner lot with frontage on Wayne and Oak. And the way the ordinance reads is that corner lots have 2 front yards, which would be along Wayne and Oak. And the address of the property, the front of the dwelling dictates where the side and the rear yard are. So based on that interpretation, this would constitute the rear yard. I note, which has, in the R1 zone, there's a rear yard setback requirement of 25 feet. I'd note that the existing rear yard setback is non-conforming at, it looks like 16.37, that's the distance here. And the new addition would have a setback of 9.41 feet, and the deck, the unroofed deck would have a distance of 6.18 feet. I'll note that, you know, in a way, this sort of functions like a side yard, and the minimum side yard requirement is 7.5 feet. You know, just by looking at this, you could tell obviously that there's not a whole lot of wiggle room for a logical addition that would meet, you know, the existing home. And as proposed, even with the improvements, it's still well under the building coverage and improved lot coverage. So it seems to be, you know, a reasonably sized addition. And this back part of the house also is less than the maximum building height of 30 feet. It's actually well under that. I think the peak might be at 25 feet or so. So the only two variants, or the one variance really has to do with the rear yard setback. Again, where 25 feet is required. The addition measures again at 9.41. The deck's at 6.18. Again, it exceeds the minimum side yard requirement. As far as I'm aware, the property's been maintained well, you know, for as long as I've been driving by it. So that's it. So, you know, it seems to be a pretty straightforward hardship case, again, being the way that the property is currently developed and oriented. And I guess I'll ask the architect, maybe just since he's here, is it, I guess your understanding that there wasn't a whole lot of wiggle room in terms of coming up with, you know, plan alternatives for this project? Mr. Tudor?
Well, yes. Honestly speaking, I don't have too much to say about your, beside your speech. It was very good and present the project very well. For me, the project is a straightforward project. The property, the nice size property in River Edge. They have two real hardship: corner property and wrong address, wrong orientation of the house. But doesn't mean that it's going to hurt anybody that we're going to go with this design, because our backyard, called backyard right now, in fact, it's adjacent to the neighbor's side yard. That normally this is a side yard. Our backyard is on the south side of the property where the brook is, because otherwise that side yard is going to be really a huge side yard and meaningless to be a side yard. Therefore, what can I tell you? It's a property with two hardship: wrong orientation and corner property. But doesn't mean that my client doesn't have the right to develop the property as close as possible to the rights of other property located in the neighborhood. And there's the reason we are in front of you to ask you to give us some relief and to go ahead with this addition that is very important for my client. I don't know, probably you heard my client emphasizing that they were waiting for another baby and they need an extra bedroom. Besides that, is not much I can say. I'm ready to answer. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Tudor. I think you're good.
I think he was finished, Tom. Mr. Barron's, any further questions from you?
I have no further questions.
Okay, thank you, sir.
If I may, just a second.
Sure.
In 30 years of practicing as a licensed architect in New Jersey, I have this situation before, not only once, several times. But for the very beginning, the zoning officer told us, John, is not a problem of zoning, it's a problem of address. Therefore, we never have any other procedure. They accepted the zoning application and we went ahead with the design. But right now, we have to comply with the zoning requirements of River Edge, and we are in front of you to ask for the relief to develop this property.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tudor, for that. Mr. Costa, any questions from you?
Yeah, so I mean, basically, this is definitely in Tom's and the board's purview. Any engineering issues can be worked out through soil moving to the building department if the board approves it. I got excited there for about 3 seconds, Mr. Chairman, because when the architect said I was licensed in 1990, then he said 3. So now it reinforces that I am an old man because I was in 1990. That's all that. But other than that, that's it. Thank you.
You don't know that.
Thank you, Mr. Costa. Going to open it up to the board for questions and comments. Mr. Cray, we'll start with you, if I may.
Hey, yeah, just one question. It's for Mr. Burns. So if the front entrance had been along Oak Avenue rather than Wayne, the only real variance we'd be talking about is the like 1 foot 4 inch side yard setback at the deck. Is that correct?
That's the way the ordinance reads, or at least that's the
Right.
way I read the ordinance, right?
Right. Okay. All right. That's the only question I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cray. Mr. Mayor,
No questions. I'm good.
thank you, sir. Mr. Councilman,
No questions. I walk by the property all the time. I know the Lynches are lovely people and we'd love to have them in River Edge. I know obviously Mark and all his great work in River Edge. I won't say that he's a lovely person, but because I played softball with him. Look, the house itself is a reasonably sized house. I think what they're asking here is reasonable. It makes sense, you know, when you walk by it, like it could have been, you know, it should have been, it clearly should have been facing the other way as the architect says. So personally, I have no problem with this application. Thanks.
okay, thank you, Councilman. Ms. Boland,
No questions.
thank you. Mr. Gibbons,
No, no questions at all. Looks good.
thank you, sir. Mr. Bustede,
All good. No questions.
thank you. Mr. Arakelian,
I have one question. Is it a boy or a girl?
It's a boy, the second boy.
He's gonna need that room. No, no more questions.
thank you, sir. Mr. Pfeffer,
No questions. Thank you.
thank you, sir. Mr. Merman,
Okay. So far, everybody's neglected to mention the existing 10-foot easement that's along the rear line there. I'd like you folks to acknowledge that, especially Mr. Costa. Is that correct?
so Mr. Merman, you're looking at the property survey?
Well, first of all, yes, there's we'll get to that. Yes, on the property survey, there's a 10-foot easement shown. The town's sanitary and sewer maps also record that, and nobody's mentioned that. And that's going to be possible constraint.
If it looks like so it's a 10-foot wide. Why don't I show this just so we can all be on the same page? Bear with me here. So Mr. Merman's correct. There is a 10-foot wide drainage easement which traverses a portion of the property running in a east-west orientation. So it extends from here to connects to the drainage here. You know, the brook's there, the drainage easement. So it's 5 feet on either property is the way this looks. So it does exist in the, I guess, vicinity of where the addition is proposed, but it seems to end at 5 feet and the deck is at a little over 6 feet. So
we'll get to those dimensions, but let's acknowledge the fact that there's an easement there. 5 foot of it falls onto this property along that rear line. Is that correct?
it would appear so, correct.
Okay, let's move on.
All right.
Mr. Tudor, your site plan shows the series of dimensions from that rear line to the building and all, and you reference a survey by Mr. Latrine, and I would like to know where those dimensions came from, because the submitted survey to the board with this application does not show is absent any dimensions.
Dimension for what?
Your drawing that shows the site plan, okay? You recognize that drawing, correct? It's a site plan in the upper right-hand corner. You have a series of dimensions from that property line, the rear property line, to the building. And the note on your drawing under the site plan, you reference a licensed surveyor. Did you obtain those dimensions from the licensed surveyor?
I don't get it.
You don't understand it?
We're looking at sheet A1. There, you have a site plan in the upper right corner.
Why would we have to confirm them? The survey certified, isn't it? It's a certified survey with measurements on it.
Yes, it's a.
So why would we need to get it recertified again once it's been certified once before? Nothing's changed on this property.
I'm simply asking, did you obtain those dimensions from a licensed surveyor?
Yes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Yes.
the answer is yes. You're telling me yes.
Yes,
Your application, the Lynch application, is absent a survey from a licensed surveyor that shows the dimensions that you're referring to. How did you obtain those dimensions?
from the survey. From the survey. They're this dimension on the survey, and I just copy them.
That's the survey.
It's a certified survey
It's
for
a
the
survey.
surveyor. It's like any project we do.
No.
It's part of the.
Mr. Merman, did you, there, in the application, the applicant submitted a survey from Lantelme, Currens and Associates?
That's right, that's correct. I have a copy of that, but on that copy, I do not see the dimensions referenced that he is showing. You showed me a survey absent the dimensions that you're claiming to be there.
I guess he's trying to say from here to here, is that match up?
Well, the survey, I pick up the distance from the property line to the existing structure. What you meant, you say that it's not a dimension in the survey up there. Am I right?
So you
I scale it. You
Oh,
know,
you scaled it.
obviously,
Ah,
if there's no dimension in here, I scale it. Everything is on scale.
so then I am correct that you submitted an application with dimensions that are missing, and the ones that you show, you scaled and made up.
Right.
Okay,
But in such a way that our proposed addition is not going to get closer to the property line than the dimension I show on the drawings.
I understand that, but you made up dimensions. These are, there is no recording of official dimensions from the property line to the building.
To the existing building. To
That's
the
correct.
existing building.
You just told me you scaled them.
No, I don't get your point.
Mr. Murray, are you talking about the dimensions for the addition or for the existing structure? Because it looks like there are measurements corresponding from the survey for some of the.
Okay.
There's the 29.5 feet on the Oak Avenue side corresponds with the survey. And there's a 25.2 foot run from the Wayne Avenue side.
Yeah, those are fine. I have no problem with those. We're
Okay.
concerned with the rear yard, okay?
Okay.
We're focusing on the rear yard. The other dimensions are acceptable, and I might mention that it also shows a 10-foot easement on the map that on the survey portion that was submitted. And I think the architect admitted that the dimensions that he shows on his site plan for the rear yard were scaled by him. They were made up by him. There
No.
is no professional licensed surveying dimensions that he used to obtain that, because there's none shown on the submitted survey.
The dimension that is not shown in the survey is the dimension from the existing property to the west side of the west property line.
I'm-
Okay, that dimension is not on the survey. And I,
Mr. Tudor, we're addressing the rear yard. The other dimensions shown on the survey are perfectly fine and acceptable because they're on a licensed surveyor's survey.
right,
I'm concerned with the rear yard dimensions from the property line to the house, which you have just told me you scaled.
well, whatever I didn't have, I scaled it because it's not in the drawings. It's not in the drawings, the dimension, and I scale it. I know that it's a certain amount of approximation, but the condition is that the addition is not gonna go closer to the property line than whatever I mentioned up here.
We have yet to determine that, okay? I've got to get the ground dimensions established first, and we're in the process of trying to do that. But once again, there are no ground dimensions in the rear yard from the center of the easement, which is the rear property line, to the house.
Right, I don't have it on the survey, yes.
Okay,
And I
so
scaled.
how could, right, well,
But
then we cannot really proceed to discuss your backyard encroachments.
because this thing, whatever we're proposing that the proposed addition is not gonna get closer to the property to whatever I mentioned in here. Whatever it's in there, how much is from the existing house to the property line, I'm not really sure because I don't have a dimension.
Mr. Costa, can you hear me? Mr. Costa?
Yeah, Mr. Berman, all right. So the surveyor engineer prepared a survey. He didn't put a dimension on the existing house. But if you use this plan is based on this survey with the setbacks from Wayne, from Oak, from the side yard, the adjacent side yard by the easement. But again, I don't think he scaled it because he's down to 16.37 feet. Maybe one question, did you do this by AutoCAD? Did you put it in CAD?
Yeah, I put it on CAD, yeah.
Okay, so if you measured, as an architect, you measured the house.
Yes, I measured.
Verified the dimensions of the house. So if you come in, for all practical purposes, one side yard is the side yard dimension is 70.2 feet. On Oak Avenue, it's 70 feet. For all practical purposes, it's roughly 90 degrees. So if you measure through from the setback of Wayne Avenue plus the house dimension, you come up with a number. But regardless, whether it's 16.1 feet, 16 feet, 15 feet, the application is that if the board approves it, the setback's going to be 9.41 feet and 5.16 feet. If that's incorrect, if the board approves it and they build it, and it's not that, two things happen. They can't get a CO, they come back to this board, and if the board says no, because it's less than what they're proposing, then they need to get a demo saw out and fix it if they can't get a variance from this board. So my suggestion would be, if the board approves it, before they do anything, verify that that's the dimension, and they got to live with what the board approves. As far as the pipe coming in, we're doing a big project on Oak, Voorhees. They're south of us. So as far as the easement, as far as engineering, not concerned. They're to the south of what we're doing. But again, if they're wrong, if Mr. Tudor is incorrect, I would verify it if the board approves it. That's all. If he can certainly use the survey they provided, and as an architect, he can propose what his setbacks are going to be to the proposal of his addition. If he's wrong, he should pay his insurance, make sure it's up to date. And if he can't get a variance and they don't want to absolutely check it before they start, and it's screwed up when they try to finish, Remember, nobody gets a CO until there's an as-built. And the as-built is checked by Tom, checked by the building inspector, is checked by our office. So there's 3 checks and balances before anybody goes anywhere. And if they're wrong, then they either need to come back to this board for relief or get out the demo saw and correct your problem. The only thing with this town compared to other towns, you can't get to a framing permit unless you verify where the foundation is. That doesn't happen here because it's not on our books. Other communities, you can't get to the next step. You have to check where your foundation walls are to make sure they're in compliance before you get the framing permit to continue. That doesn't happen here. Shame on them if they're wrong. But I agree, I know what you're saying, Mr. Merman, but the issue is on them, so to speak, not on the board. If the board approves this project, they're approving what's on the proposed plan, 9.41 feet.
Let's recall, remember also that we got a 5-foot easement in there. So the clearance theoretically from, the real clearance is from the edge of that easement line to the building. So it's
Right.
not, right, it's not.
I have no issues with that. If they break the pipe, touch the pipe, tag, they're it.
No,
Tag, they are it.
my point is, it's even narrower than you think, than appears. So,
Well, again, I mean, they have, so to speak, they have a hardship because they're on a corner lot. They have a hardship because they have easements on both sides. They got a stream on the one side. So they're limited which directions they can go. And the question becomes, would you rather have them violate the front yards on the corner? Probably not. Where they are, again, it's up to the board. I don't want to be a proponent or anything. I want to be neutral. But as far as the engineering, I'm not concerned. But again, the architect should check his dimensions to make absolutely sure what he's proposing and what's built in the field is in the right place. Because if it's not, like I said earlier, get out the demo saw or get relief from this board if they have to come back in the future. And I'm sure this board is not going to be happy if the dimensions are wrong, and whether it's a mistake, whether it was done, whether it was sleight of hand, whatever the case may be, just check the dimensions.
so Mr. Architect, Mr. Tudor, you heard Mr. Costa.
Yes.
And we know what, Dick, one other thing, we know exactly where the property is down there. So you know what, they really can't, they can't really do too much because we know exactly where the property lines happen to be in that area because of the projects that we're doing.
I'm more concerned with clearances.
If I may, my concern is that the proposed structure is not going to be closer to the property line than the number specifying here. The proposed deck is not going to be closer to the property line than the number specifying here. If the new proposed structure is going to be a little narrow because we are a little wrong with 2 or 3 inches, we don't care. If the bedroom is going to be 12 feet 4 inches instead of 12 feet 8 inches, is not a very big deal. But we're going to make sure that we comply with everything that is show up here in the site plan, and we comply with the zoning requirements that is going to be approved by the board. Therefore, my new structure is not going to be closer than 9 foot something to the property line, and the deck is not going to be closer than 5 foot something to the property line. That's all. If the addition is going to be smaller, we don't care. We're going to eat it. But there's no other way to go. You can, unless we're going to have an engineer that is going to do a site design, and the engineer already did the zoning tabulation, and he agreed with us. The zoning tabulation, you have it in front of you, it's prepared by a site engineer. What else you might be looking for?
Mr. Tudor, can I, through the chair, 2 things. You're 5.16, and I tell my young engineers in my office, go to whole numbers, 5.16, and then you have 9.442 or 43, go to whole numbers. And I'm going to say the last thing for tonight and take the microphone away. If you build a bridge and the bridge falls down, no partial credit. Just remember that statement.
Okay. Mr.
Down
Tudor,
one.
you heard Mr. Costa state that the dimensions should be accurate. We should take into account the 5-foot easement. Your rebuttal or attitude as a couple of inches difference doesn't make a difference. It does. This is scientific. All right. And I'd like you to go back and reconsider.
Construction is not a science, it's a practice.
That's true.
Construction is not a science, it's a practice. I'm 50 years in this business. I never did a building that is square, completely square. Nothing is perfect in construction. I'm 50 years in this business.
Well, you're not the only one that's got 65 years in this business. So do I. So
God bless you.
let's move on. All right. Don't give me that. Let's deal with numbers here. Okay.
But why don't you agree with me that if we're gonna comply with the number on the drawings, nobody's gonna get hurt?
That's
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Mr. Pfeffer.
Just to avoid this argument continuing, I think all of us get a sense of what the disagreement is. Mr. Merman obviously is concerned because the numbers have not been certified. They're not necessarily verified. They're coming from the architect's estimates. And so it would be a concern as to whether these numbers are precise. On the other hand, the architect is saying that he's going to live with these numbers and this is the best that he can do, and he will be responsible for the consequences if they are not. And if his estimates end up being larger than, I mean, if the reality is that his numbers are less, if the actual work is less than what he estimates, then there's no harm done because he's not using up more space. But if it goes over what his estimates are, then he's going to have, as Mr. Costa said, he's going to have problems. I'd like to move that we move this discussion along, that it not be an ongoing argument. The board has the information, we have the application, we have the numbers. And of course, if the board were to approve this application, it would be subject to the accuracy of these numbers. If the numbers turn out to be incorrect or not accurate, to the point where it's, the work actually goes in excess of these proposed numbers, then obviously the applicant is going to have problems because they're going to have to correct it and they're going to have to take steps to correct it. So given that, recognizing the concern that Mr. Merman has, which is a legitimate concern, and the statements of the architect that he's standing by his numbers, I suggest that we move on to the next question or the next point.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Pfeffer. Mr. Merman, I'm going to come back to you. Do you have further questions for the architect?
Do I have further questions?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'd like to know how he's going to resolve it.
Say it again, please. I couldn't hear you.
Second, Mark Bernardi, I'm the contractor on the job. Just I want to make a point of reference here. If we get the survey recertified to the accurate measurement coming off the rear yard now, then have Mr. Tudor see the new survey when it's been certified, we can present it back to him to make sure that the plan conforms to the measurements that he came up with. If we can look at the issue tonight based on the plan that we have, and if he comes in like he's saying, if it comes in 2 inches less than what it's going to be, no harm done, right? We're taking this application based on the information we have. If it goes beyond that, Mr. Tudor will change the architectural drawings to reflect the setbacks that are on the plan as is shown now.
Now you're talking. Now you're talking. All right.
Thank you.
Let me give you some guidance, okay? All right. To save repetitious submissions. All right, so I would say that the deck that you propose, the new deck should be in alignment with the edge of the new building addition, okay? They should not project further into the rear yard. I think that's reasonable. Furthermore, I would suggest that the deck to grade access either be within the deck itself or be put on the Oak Street side, which would not put that into the rear yard as an intrusion. I recognize that the stair on the rear, on the Oak Street side will also cause a variance, but you got plenty of room over there. We could note that in any revised drawing. And I would also recommend that any of those revisions that are made to the drawing also be we also revise the bulk data and so forth, and the variances needed accordingly. That will save you another go around. How does that sound?
You don't have to agree to his recommendations if you feel it. Again, speaking on behalf of the owners, the way the plan has been configured with the kitchen layout and everything else, if you take that, let me finish. If you're gonna take the deck now and take the whole deck and take it from this side of the house and throw it on the other side of the house, you're talking about change. Yes, you are. How are you gonna?
No, I'm not. I'm talking about the proposed deck that you're showing. Right now, that deck extends further into the rear yard. And I'm simply saying, revise that deck so that the rear yard side lines up with the face of your building addition.
Yeah, if you
All right.
move it back here.
So you're saying you make a 7-foot wide deck. I don't know if you have a deck on your house, but the deck would be at 7 foot. If you kept it in line with the rear of the house, you'd make it the deck at 7 feet, correct?
No.
Yes, look at the plan. It says 7 feet, 7 feet from the rear of the house to the new addition.
Right now, you're showing, you're showing a dimension of 9 feet, I believe, to your new building line, 9 foot and.
It's a 10-foot 2 deck right now from the existing structure to the outside of the new deck.
Well,
It's
you
10-foot 2. So you're asking them to make a 7-foot deck, which is impossible for use. It's really more an oversized walkway.
I think you're misreading the drawing. Right now, the architect shows, and I'll use the number he has. He shows 9.41 feet from the property line to your new dwelling. All right. He also shows 6.18 feet from the property line to the edge of the deck.
Mr. Merriman, hold on 1 second. Can we project whatever drawing you're looking at so the rest of us can visualize?
Well, if somebody will put your site plan up on the screen, we
Tom's doing
can.
that right now.
Right.
And blow it up. Blow up that corner of the deck. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Blow up bigger if you can. All right, slide it, okay, fine.
Yeah,
If
the problem
you-
is they're working off the site plan.
Yeah, if they look at, can they bring up?
Again, you're working off the site plan. If you look at the architectural drawings that he's providing to do here, the deck is going to be 10 feet. I know you're showing a 6.18 rear yard, but that deck right now from outside the deck dimension to against the house is only a 10-foot wide deck. That's all I'm trying to tell you. That's all it is. When you're not seeing those numbers because you don't have them in front of you. You're just showing me the setback provision you have. You don't have the actual size of the deck. If you had the architectural plan in front of you, the actual size of that deck is 10 feet.
It's on the second page.
It's on page 2.
Page 2 of the architecture.
Can you look at page 2, please, so you'll understand where we're coming from?
No.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Now can you see it? Now look at the dimension.
Blow it up. Okay, keep blowing it up. Okay, fine. What is the distance? Okay. Do you have a cursor? Can you put the cursor on your new rear wall there?
That's-
That thick line.
Whoever's got this thing projected,
Mr. Merman, this is the rear wall, the proposed rear wall. And this
Yes.
is the proposed deck. So
correct.
to Mr. Bernardi's point, you have the 7-foot dimension, which is, and then 3'2". So combined from here to there is 10 feet 2 inches,
All
the
right,
depth of the deck.
Mr. Behrens, put your cursor back on that new rear wall.
Yes.
Slide that over towards Oak Street.
Yeah.
That's the line I'm talking about, that the deck should be lining up with the outside wall, new wall.
7 feet.
That would make it a 7-foot.
Yeah, I think that goes back to Mr.
Actually, if
Bernardi's
you
point.
take-
It's a 7-foot deck.
Right.
Right. That's what I'm
Right.
trying
That-
to.
the dimension right here is 7 feet.
6.96
Right.
feet.
Can I
If
also
you hold
say?
that wall, it's under 7 feet.
Correct.
And then to move the stairs to the other side, we have a small child and we're having another child that we really don't want them to go that way to get off the deck. We want them to stay in our backyard. We're- you know,
This guy's-
Land use decisions do not depend on family size, okay?
Right, so
Let's get that straight.
Going back to our point, then you do realize it's gonna be a 7-foot wide deck if we go by what your recommendation is.
That's correct.
Okay, 7-foot deck is hardly usable. Wouldn't you say that?
Well,
To put a
it's-
table on it until you use.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry, can I ask a question of Mr. Merman? Mr.
Yes.
Merman, what is the purpose of reducing the deck by the 3 feet? What is the actual, what's
Well,
actually, how's it gonna benefit the town if they lose 3 feet on a deck?
Well, it obstructs the rear yard clearance, all right? Period. All right?
You're worried about the pipe.
If you use that argument, the deck could go in, then why can't the house wall go in?
Well, because the deck can very easily be removed if there's a problem. I mean, I could remove a deck from somebody's backyard. I can't take down a kitchen in somebody's house. Those are two completely different things. I think at a certain point, we have to start looking at what are the purposes of these laws? And I don't see that this extra 3 feet is going to, change the character of this town the way some of these giant
Okay.
mansions that are being built in this town are. So, I mean, I respect everything that you've said so far, and I'm very thankful that you're on this board because you teach me things every single time. But I don't see where this argument is falling now. 3 feet of a deck, what's the purpose going to do except for make the deck pretty much useless for a family of 4?
I hear you. That I've given you my opinion and my land use outlook. If you want to poll the other board members, that's fine.
I was just asking you a question, sir, and I respect everything you've said. And as I said, you teach me things every single time. So I'm very thankful that you're on this board. I just happen to disagree with this particular portion of your argument. I just
Okay,
don't
let's-
see the purpose of it and why we're spending so much time. I don't think it helps River Edge in any way whatsoever.
All right, let's regroup here if we can, please. Mr. Merman, if you wouldn't mind, if you would just if you finish up any additional comments outside of what you've already provided.
No, I'm done with my comments.
I'm done with your comments. Okay. All right. All right. At this point, we're going to open it up to the public. Ms. Steinle, do we have anybody in the public?
There are no members of the public.
Okay. We still go through the
So
procedural.
seeing that there are none, we can
We'll
move
just-
on.
We'll dispense with okay. All right. At this point, I'm going to entertain a motion on the application. We've heard some concerns. I don't know if there are any further comments, questions from the board based on the information that's just been presented. If there are none, I will entertain a motion on the application.
I will move to accept the application as submitted.
Okay, thank you, Councilman.
Second,
Is there a second?
second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pfeffer.
I just want to add the note that says that the dimension from the existing structure to the property line, as well as that setback for the wooden deck be confirmed prior to issuance of any permits.
So, so with the applicant, is that acceptable to the applicant, that condition? Mr. Tudor, Mr. Bernardi, Mr. Lynch, Mrs. Lynch?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So amended.
All right, thank you, Councilman. And Mr. Pfeffer, I think you were the second. Okay. Ms. Steinle, when you're ready.
All right, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Ms. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Merman.
I can't accept it now.
All right, Mr. Pfeffer,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Councilman Kenigo,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Bastide.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes.
Okay.
You.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. We appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thanks for coming in.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Okay. As I said before, we're going to make a slight adjustment in our agenda. Before we get to the old business, we're going to just move to board member comments. Mr. Merman, I believe there are a couple of things you had indicated you wanted to bring to the record this evening.
Yes, I do. And I would like it at this portion so the mayor and council can be, the mayor and the councilman can be included. Tonight, I'd like to talk about Dunkin' Donuts quickly. It's as you know, the Dunkin' Donuts is a very visible project in town. And it appears that the south end site wall has been radically changed. And I'd like the design professionals to give us a quick review of what's happening down there.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, I'll bring the board up to speed. If the board recalls, I actually brought up an issue with the retaining wall when this project was in front of the board a few years ago. And I said we should verify it, go back, come back. The board wanted to move this, which they ultimately did. I forget which board member said deal with it during construction, which we did. They submitted a design. They literally fired, I think, 2 engineers. They hired a 3rd engineer. They tried to bring in the manufacturer for for the block itself. Ultimately, because the grades were incorrect, the wall heights were incorrect, they redesigned the wall. So the wall, what you see out there is a reinforced concrete wall. What they're going to do is now cut the block, and they're going to face that wall with the exact block that are on site. So everything, when it's all said and done, is going to look uniform. The only difference is it's not a dry-laid block wall with geogrid going back, because that design did not work. It wouldn't have been stable in the long run. It probably would have collapsed. And ultimately, that's what's in front of you. So they poured a foundation. It's a reinforced concrete wall that's actually going to have the block as a facade on front of it. So as far as the public's concerned, the look of it, once it's all said and done, is going to be uniform. Just hold out. I don't know exactly when that will happen, but prior to a certificate of occupancy, everything will look uniform and it will blend into the wall that's out there, the gray block that's there. But the reason being is the original design did not work or will not work, and that's ultimately what happened. And there was a lot of screaming, there was a lot of back and forth, there was a lot of aggravation. Probably somebody heard me screaming on the job site. If you were there about 6 months ago, you might have heard me in your houses if you were that within about 1.5 miles. But that's ultimately what happened.
Okay. I was assuming that that's what happened, Mr. Costa, but I wanted the mayor, council, if they weren't, and the rest of the board members aware of what was happening. And for the very reason that this is a very visible River Edge project. And it could also be a poster child for Dunkin' Donuts double drive-through lanes, okay? And is it safe to assume, Mr. Costa, that the curb lines and so forth were not changed as a result?
Mr. Merman, if you went out there, the only more concrete that's on this job right now is probably in Las Vegas at the Hoover Dam. But right now, if you go out there, if you see this wall, it will stand the test of time. I had a professor, he said, if you build a dam, be willing to live below it. That's what I told these gentlemen out there. So I have no concern. They actually, because of the batter, they screwed up that. They had to go back and redesign it again because it would have been in the parking lot. It's a long story. It's ultimately, as far as I know, it's over, but before anything happens, you will see the face, and we were on top of it. The next door neighbor was going to get involved. There was a lot of aggravation out there. At the end of the day, the developer absolutely worked with us. I only had one screaming match with one member of his team.
Okay.
And I haven't seen that person since, and I haven't spoken to him since.
I always had faith in you, Mr. Costa. I'm sure I was in my own mind all along. I was sure that you were well on top of it, but I just wanted everybody to be aware of what was going on down there.
And the good news is I'm not even in the concrete. So that's another positive
right.
aspect of it.
All right.
I wasn't placed in the concrete when they were pouring the wall. So
Okay.
Everything's gonna work out, and even the lights, there's an issue because we went to solar lights. They no longer make the solar lights. Mayor, I apologize that we were gonna do the solar lights and make River Edge green. And apparently the solar lights are no longer a green commodity. They are no longer produced. So that game is over. We had a discussion with Public Service last week. Lisette was involved. So that is in motion. Lights will go up there and will be minimal cost to the community. Very minimal.
Okay, thank you.
All right. You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, I'm well satisfied. I'm also glad that the board is fully aware of what's transpiring down there. There was never any doubt in my mind. And any other comments? I do have others, but I'm going to hold them for the next meeting. The reason I wanted to talk about this is it's a rapidly moving project construction wise. So with that, I suggest we move forward.
Okay. Very good. The next item of business this evening is under the old business category. Prior to proceedings, given this involves a D variance, I will ask the mayor and the councilman to depart this evening's proceedings, as this is an application that you're not eligible to hear.
All right. Thank you all for all that you do. We really appreciate it.
Good night, gentlemen.
Thank you all. Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Okay. As I said, we're in the old business category at this time. The applicant is Dark Star Development LLC. The property is 335 Johnson Avenue, block 1405, lot 3. This is a reconsideration of a denial of application rendered on May 24th. I believe the applicant is here. Good evening, Mr. Imparato, and I think I see your counsel as well. Mr. Sarlo, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Hope all is well with everyone.
Thank you. Hope the same with you, Ms. Steinle. Do we need to swear anybody in?
I believe everyone was previously sworn, and you will remain under oath today. Just as, if you'd like, I can just do a little background to let the board know what the procedure will be for tonight.
That'd be great if you proceed. Thank you.
So the board at its last meeting authorized reconsideration of this application. The basis for reconsideration was to allow the applicant to address matters that the board had concerns about and to provide clarity as to what the applicant was seeking. So tonight, the board must only consider the changes and clarifications that are presented tonight and make a determination as to whether to approve or deny the application. And the applicant is going to present its revisions and clarifications, but shouldn't necessarily restate and represent the entire application.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions from the board? What Ms. Steinle just provided? Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I believe you did set a curfew,
indeed I did, Mr. Berman.
10 o'clock, I believe,
10 p.m.
10 p.m. Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Sarlo, at this point, I will turn the floor over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Charles Sarl on behalf of the applicant, Dark Star Development LLC. Thank you for your time this evening, as well as the vote the last time we were together with regard to the board voting to reconsider this matter. As Councilor had indicated, this is really not a rehearing in its entirety. It's not a do-over. It's really to be focused on the two issues that the board voted to reconsider, that specifically being the height variance, as well as the off-track improvement with regard to the paving of the roadway. So there's two separate issues, and we'd like to try and address them, clarify them, and then just kind of restate the law. And then we will go on to the paving of the roadway. So with that said, just to move the process along, we did submit, and I'm sure the board members have, we did submit two revised drawings. One is a elevation with measurements that we're going to go through in a minute, and that is for reference purposes, the drawing A-8.1 with the revision date of July 14th, 2023. And Councilor, if we can maybe mark that as an exhibit.
All right. Yeah. To try and find what our last exhibits were. I'll just mark this one as R1 for reconsideration.
That's really just move the process along. Okay. And then the second one is the utility grading and utility plan from, let's see here, it's drawing C.2.3 with a revision date of July 14th, 2023. And we could mark that as R-2, as that's also a revision. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that said, I'd like to recall the architect. Victor, are you on? There you are. Okay, Mr. Fletty, licensed architect. So Mr. Fletty, I remind you that you're still under oath from the initial time that you testified.
Understood.
Okay, so you prepared for this tonight's hearing, the elevation and specifically with various measurements on your section AA of what we have just marked as R-1. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so maybe if you could share your screen and pull that up and go through.
I'm sorry, I don't have that capability here.
Okay.
If someone else could.
Yeah.
Mason's got that, right?
Mason was right.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mason's
Okay.
on it.
So if we can, Mason, if you can maybe enlarge that specifically where the numbers are. Okay, and then Victor, if you want to just go through the relevance of the height.
Sure. So the main change that was made from the original drawings was at the top of that drawing, we reduced the parapet wall height of the main wall, front wall, entry wall of the building. So this reduced the height of the front entry wall by 1 foot 7 inches, taking the overall height from 52 feet 3 inches to 50 feet 8 inches. In the drawing, there are some additional red dimensions to illustrate that in this zone, the allowable building height is 35 feet. On top of a building height, they allow an accessory roof structure of 7 feet, and that is illustrated by the second dimension. Our top of parapet wall is 7 feet 9 inches above what is the allowed accessory roof structure. So that we can try to illustrate that we're really only 7 feet 9 inches above, with only our front entry wall, not the entire building, above the allowable height of a bulkhead wall such as this. So that's the additional red dimensions that were added and bubbled to also, like I said, show that the parapet wall height was reduced.
Okay, so Mr. Folletti, I just want you to clarify some of the other numbers. So
sure,
right along the building there, it says ground floor.
Correct.
Right, and there's a measurement of 50 feet 8 inches. What is that? What does that represent?
So that is giving the board the actual visual height that you're going to see when you stand on the ground and in front of the building, what the actual height of that wall will be. It was previously 52'3", now it is 50 feet 8 inches.
Okay, and at the prior hearing, and admittedly, and I don't think, Victor, you were on during the reconsideration, and admittedly, I may have been using so previously it was 52 feet before you lowered the parapet?
That is correct.
52.25 feet. So again, admittedly, there may have been some interchange of the numerical values, and I know especially during the reconsideration, I was using the 52.25 feet, but Mr. Folletti, that is, like you just said, that is the kind of worst case scenario from a point grade where the elevator is. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is the height of the wall. That is not the height of the building as defined by the River Edge zoning ordinance. The height of the building is 49 feet 1 inches, which is taken from average grade to the top surface of the roof. That dimension has not changed.
Okay, and the average grade was calculated on the previous submission. That's like six feet off of each corner, I believe it is.
That's correct. It was calculated in accordance with River Edge ordinance.
Okay, so from the zoning perspective, zoning code perspective, what we're talking about is we have a height of 49 feet 1 inch.
Correct.
Okay. And the previous average grade, or the previous height from the average grade was what?
It was always 49 feet 1 inch to the top of the roof. From the ground level that you stand on, it was 52'3". Now it's 50 feet 8 inches.
No, but the average grade would have been higher also, because you went to a higher parapet.
That's correct. So to the parapet wall, it would have been 1 foot 7 inches higher. That's correct.
Okay. So again, for the purposes of the variance that this applicant is requesting, the relevant height is the 49 feet 1 inch.
That is correct.
And what's allowable, you have shown there, is 35 feet.
Yeah.
And the ordinance allows 7 feet for accessory structures such as the elevator shaft and the parapet wall.
Correct.
And that differential then gets you to what you were, you started off with, basically needing a variance of 7 feet 9 inches.
That's correct.
Okay. And it's 7 feet 9 inches. Is that less than a full story?
Yes, a typical story is roughly about 10 feet.
This is whatever, 30% less, or
correct,
a little less, something like that. Okay. Okay, thank you for the clarification of of those measurements. Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions for this witness.
Okay, Mr. Behrens, any questions?
I just want to reiterate, I guess, the change in so based on what Mr. Folletti said, and I was even confused for a second there, but I measured from average grade to the top of roof being
Tom, we're having problems with your audio.
with the D6 height variance. And
You're
it
breaking
appears
up,
I've
Tom.
frozen.
Tom, sorry, you have to ask you to
Yeah,
restate what you said. We're having problems with your audio.
Yes, can you hear me now? I apologize.
Yeah,
Right.
there you go.
All right. Hopefully I can maintain it. So anyway, as stated by Mr. Folletti, the relief being sought relative to the D6 height variance is the dimension.
I think you're asking if the dimension for the variance is 49 feet 1 inches. That is correct.
He's
Um,
frozen.
I think he's gonna,
Yeah, let's give him a second. I think he's.
Okay.
figuring things out.
Understood. I thought it was me. Sorry.
No.
Okay.
You know what? Let's come back to Mr. Behrens. Mr. Costa, if I may, could I turn to you? Questions or comments for the architect?
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Any questions or
Yeah.
comments for the architect?
I mean, basically, again, it's up to the board. It's it's here to get voted on again tonight. You heard the testimony from the architect. Again, you go back, if the dimensions are correct, this is what they're asking for. They need to build it according to that if the board approves it. As far as the engineering issues, identical to what was in the prior application, what was in the earlier letters. None of that has changed. The only thing what I said earlier, excuse me, is I was down there today, again, with the DPW director, some of his staff, my staff. We had mapping, old mapping, VCUA mapping. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing, DPW will be doing more work down there. We're going to find the buried manholes, find them, get them, reset them, go in them, figure out what's going on down there. Absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with this applicant. So when we're done, hopefully tomorrow, in the next 2 days, we'll have answers for that. Whether this gets approved, doesn't get approved, regardless, doesn't matter about that situation.
Okay.
And we should have, again, we'll have the answers and we'll have, if we need to correct something down there, we certainly will bring it back. I know the mayor is off and the councilman's off. We have to bring it to the council, so be it. It has nothing to do with anything going on here tonight.
Okay, thanks for that. Questions from the board? Mr. Cray, I'll start with you.
Okay, so change the overall height and the apparent height to just a hair under 50 feet. Is that accurate?
The height of the wall, the apparent height that you will see if you stand on the ground level, it's 50 feet 8 inches.
50
Just a
feet.
hair over 50 feet, yes.
Okay, so effectively a 5-story height. And we're asking still, there's no change in the request for variance for a 2.5-story building to a 4-story building. Correct?
That is correct. As far as has been explained, it is only for the center portion of the building, but they're considering it a story. Yeah, so 4
Right.
stories.
Okay, so the variance request is 2.5 stories to 4 stories. And the apparent height is going to be effectively, visibly, have the impact of 5 stories.
It's a 50 feet 8 inch wall, but the height of the building at that wall is 49 feet 1 inches.
Right, okay, which again, visually,
Yep.
it's going to be a 5-story building. Okay, that's all I need to know.
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Gibbons.
I just have one question. So that area where the elevators are, the problem area, I guess, is it necessary to have those stories that the floor to ceiling 10 feet to be able to have the elevator there? Or has there been any consideration of taking that down to help make that portion of the building smaller?
So what really limits you is the floor to floor height of the office space. Obviously, the elevator needs to line up with the level of the offices. The 10-foot height inside of the office, that is, a standard height for offices these days. And the floor construction of 3 feet, especially once we added sprinklers for mechanicals as well, 3 feet is very minimal. It wouldn't really be feasible to reduce that anymore without having some difficulties in construction. So that's the floor. The floor is 13 feet. The elevator obviously needs to line up with those floors. So it has to match.
So
Victor, if I may, could you expand on the due diligence and research we did about trying to lower the top elevator 10-foot clearance and how we tried to minimize that and found we couldn't?
Sure. We did look into the elevators that were to be used with a hydraulic elevator. We were able to really, minimize that parapet wall and drop that roof down as much as we could on that top floor for the over travel, and which is how we were able to reduce that wall by 1 foot 7 inches.
So basically your answer is, obviously I get that they need to line up with the floors.
Right.
Is there any play that you can, throw us some help here and make 9-foot ceilings?
Yeah, so the only play that we had available was at the top of the elevator. Obviously it doesn't need to go up full 13 feet. And like I said, when we did do the research for the over travel on the elevator, we were able to bring that down. And I guess the question you're asking is, can they live with 9-foot ceilings in an office space?
That's my question. Yeah.
Yep, that's up to the owner. In my opinion, for the size offices that they have here, 9 foot would look substandard.
I think it might help some of the people on the board that have an issue with the height. I'm not going to speak for anyone else, but I'm just throwing it out there as an option.
That's a question for the owner for sure.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gibbons. Ms. Boland?
I agree with Mr. Gibbons, if there's any play at all, to bring down these heights with the stories. I know you're saying it's up to the applicant, but can we hear from the applicant?
Mr. Sarlo?
Sure, could we get, just to streamline it, maybe if we could get all the questions for the applicant, if any,
Okay, so
from the rest of the board members?
That's fine. We can put this on an open issues list to come back to. Ms. Boland, anything further?
No, my concern is the height.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pfeffer?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Arkalian?
I'm good right now. I'll wait to hear the owner's answers on the questions that are already out there.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Merman?
None.
Okay. All right. Mr. Sarlo, you can proceed.
Okay, so that is a question for the owner, for the applicant, because obviously it affects the use of the building, the look of the building, the use of the building, and the use of the space, as well as the investment being made. So before I call him so he can answer that question, I do want to just reiterate the law. And now this is law that the board members have heard in the first hearing. I may have alluded to it during the reconsideration, but it's relevant when we talk about the perception is it's a 5-story height, or could we lower? Is there any play? Could we lower it? That's all good to consider, but it's all done in the context of what the variance is that we're asking for, and it's 7 feet 9 inches. I don't think that's in dispute. And how does that apply to the law? And the case is the Grasso case, Grasso v. Borough of Spring Lake. And there the court dealt with a height variance. That would happen to be residential, I believe. This is commercial and office building, but it dealt with a height variance. In that case, really was the first time that the court dealt with it. And they said, with a height variance, what is the concern? You know, what should the board members be looking at? And our professional planner, Doran, testified to this, and just looking really refreshing the, everyone's memory, is the court in the Grasso case said, the height, you should be looking at the light and air, any concerns related to light and air. Specifically as it relates to the height that you're requesting a variance for. So as it relates to this case, as being proposed, the area of the building that this 7'9" is 2.5% of the building floor area, 2.5%. Now, the concern about light and air. So, kind of let's address that. And the Grasso case also talked about, can the site accommodate the problems associated with this extra height? Now we're talking about that 7 feet 9 inches for 2.5% of the square foot of the building. That's not even of the entire site. That percentage goes down if we took that percentage over the entire lot area. You heard the architect, not tonight, but in the first hearing, testify that, and I think also the planner testified, that any shadowing from this 7'9", in fact, I think from the whole building, but we're really focused on that 7'9" tonight, would remain on the site. It would not cross the lot line and affect anybody else's property. Where this building is situated, where the lot is situated, there is no impact to other properties or structures. We're not shading another property because of the 7'9", and we are not encroaching on anybody's privacy or air, as they call it. That's kind of the setbacks because of this 7'9" over 2.5% of the building. And that's really what the law is. It says, if you can, and that's, is there any substantial detriment to the character of the neighborhood? I think that's the first, criteria, prong number one of the negative criteria, and that's how the Grasso case framed it, is can the site accommodate the problems associated with that differential, the 7'9". In terms of the other proofs, I believe the professional planner had talked about that the master plan, in terms of the special reasons, the master plan talked about, kind of upgrading this area with, more modern buildings and structures. Currently, as everybody knows, this is a vacant lot. It has been a vacant lot for a number of years. So with this modern office building, it certainly satisfies, in our belief, the special reasons. And then also the second, the negative criteria, the second prong, no substantial impairment to the zone plan. Again, if we're advancing the purposes of the master plan, the borough's master plan, it would be hard to argue that there would be any substantial impact to the zone plan. So that's the law in the context of the 7'9" height variance that we are looking at. And so with that, I just want to lay that out as a framework, and then we can have Mr. Imperato. There you are, Mr. Imperato.
Well, hold on, before you proceed, we have our planner is back, Mr. Behrens, and I also was remiss in people jumping around the screen here. I also missed Mr. Busty with any questions. So let me start with Mr. Busty.
I also believe we lost Miss Boland.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people jumping
Charles,
around.
you did a great job there, but you may have lost a few of the members of the planning board. during that, so you might have to revise that. I don't know if we're gonna rewind that, but you did a great job.
All right, so hold that thought. Mr. Busty, now, do you have any questions for the architect?
Just one question. How much was the parapet reduced by?
1 foot 7 inches, 19 inches.
And do you see any safety issues with that reduction at all?
No, it's only the parapet on the small portion. It's not on the parapet around the main roof of the building.
Okay, got it. Thank you. That's it.
And I had a question to Mr. Sarlo's comments in the.
Hold that
okay.
thought, Mr. Cray. We have just for record show, Ms. Boland's back. I think
Sorry
we
about
lost-
that. My computer kicked me off.
No, that's okay. So just, Mr. Cray, you had a question. I'm sorry. I just wanted to.
Yeah, Mr. Sarlo, you referenced the court case down in Spring Lake, I think it was. Based on your description of it, would it be reasonable for me to assume then that if I could buy a big enough single property and keep the light and air issues on my property, I can build a 10-story building in River Edge and the law would support that?
No.
Okay, so it's a matter of.
No,
degree.
if I could further elaborate.
Yeah.
Because it's not, that goes to satisfying the first prong of the negative criteria. If you were to buy a big enough property and say, I'm going to put a 10-story building on, and it's not going to shade another piece of property, I'm sure that would offend the master plan. And anybody would not be able to make that proof to the board. So you can't pick and choose in a vacuum the proofs. It's site specific, fact specific, and applying the law to that. So that's why I basically say no.
So it is a matter of where do you draw the line?
No, it's where it's looking at everything in totality. It's the location, it's where the building is situated, it's where the neighboring buildings are situated, and it's whether or not you can substantiate that it promotes one of the purposes of the municipal land use law and the master plan.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cray. Mr. Behrens, I know you were trying to make some points before we lost you.
Well, I think Mr. Folletti clarified the extent of the relief. So, the D variance relates to the height, the D6 use variance. Mr. Folletti articulated that that's measured from the average grade to the top of the, we'll call it the penthouse roof, which measures at 49 feet 1 inches, and then there's an 8-inch parapet above that. So I think he correctly identified that. Mr. Sarlo touched on the statutory relief for that, which there's, I'll just reiterate, there's a few aspects. There's what's called the positive criteria based on that Grasso case, and it's, which was correctly stated, it's can the site accommodate the problems associated with the height, as was mentioned. There's also the negative criteria, and there's 2 prongs to that. The first one is that the granting of relief, there'd be no substantial impairment to the public good. That's the first part. The second would be that there's no impairment to the intent and purpose of the master plan and zoning ordinance. So that's, I think the negative criteria is something that the board has to consider. The applicants obviously reduce the height of the parapet. He mentioned that, or the architect mentioned that you can't really reduce the floor heights in a reasonable way. So in terms of the height, there may not be much wiggle room here if the roof access is to be maintained. I just took a look at the architectural plans, and the penthouse floor area itself measures 18 feet by 32 feet. So the only wiggle room I think there would be left here would be to see if that could be somehow reduced in any way, whether or not that's even meaningful for the board. So I don't know, Paul, do you have any sense? This is a question, I guess, for Mr. Imparato or the architect, whoever wants to answer. Is there any way to further mitigate any of the, visual or height impact by further squeezing or reducing the area of the, again, the bulkhead, without, diminishing the architectural integrity of the plans?
Thank you, Tom. So,
Mr. Imparato, I just want to remind you that you're still under oath.
thank you, Charles. So I'd like to just, I'm not sure if I can answer the bulkhead thought process, but I'm just gonna, I would like to just go over the thought processes that we've had through this application and through these many meetings. So when originally when we first applied, we had a tenant taking the first floor, and it was a law office. So the law office, they were dealing with an acoustical ceiling. We could have hidden the all the mechanicals, and there's probably a little bit of height situation going on with 8'6" and leaving 1.5 feet for the mechanicals. We on the second floor thought about having an open system where the mechanicals would be shown. You know, we're landscape architects, we're civil engineers, we're a build company, we're a construction company, where we wanted a little bit more open space. That being said, Ms. Boland, when your concerns about the height, and when we first originally said that it would be very difficult to change anything, we really were put on the spot at that point, and I wasn't able to answer in a perspective that, yeah, sure, you know, we could do it. We went back, we looked at certain situations regarding the height of the first floor, which was obviously the parking underneath. We looked at the first floor with tenant space. We looked at the second floor with, I'm sorry, first floor is parking, second floor is first floor tenant space, third floor would be let it grow space, and then of course the amenity space on the fourth floor with which has the elevator shaft. When we looked at it, and when I said that it would be very difficult for us to change it, you know, we obviously were in a position that we really couldn't answer to the point that say, yeah, sure, we can do it. We could take off another 3 inches per floor. You know, as far as we're concerned, it's very minimal. We would love to tell you 1 foot, but you know, I have some very serious, sincere consultants here. We've put a lot of time and effort into this design. We've put a lot of time and effort into this space, and we're not shooting from the hip here. We want to build a beautiful building. We want our tenants, and we want our firm to be, you know, living in a good realm. So as Mr. Sarlo and Mr. Folletti mentioned, that in this day and age, that open space is relevant to many office spaces that are being built right now. And as I first mentioned in our first meeting, it's very difficult to even get employees into certain spaces, and the normal office space in this day and age has changed quite a bit. It's an free open space. People are working, standing up. It's an open space. There's no more offices, like individual offices. So we've put a tremendous amount of time into the design criteria. You know, if I was to say we were to take 3 inches off, an additional foot, I'm sure Mr. Folletti and I, Mr. Folletti and I and Mason have spoken about that to give back an additional. And if we have to do that, we have to do that. But anything beyond that, it's just, it hurts the criteria of more of the mechanical spaces that we're trying to give above the ceilings. And we would really appreciate the space from the asphalt parking lot to the top of the ceiling, just to minimize any damages to the building. Because as you see, when you go around Grand Avenue, you go around Main Street, there's so many douches or damages to the buildings from trucks. Not that this 3 or 6 inches is going to help it, but we're just trying to minimize and think ahead. So I hope I answered your question. I did have my mute off. Good.
Any further questions?
That
for the
would have been,
board for the-
that would have been a
for the
long one.
architect? Any further questions for the board for the architect at this point? Okay. Mr. Sarlo? Turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that's it on the height issue. We could quickly touch on the road, and I think they are two separate issues. And we're probably going to ask, and I know we kind of mentioned this during the reconsideration, and it would be at the board's discretion, but when it does come time for the board to vote, since we believe they are two separate issues, we'd almost like the board to consider bifurcating the vote because they do require different number of votes. As you know, the height variance, as we know, requires an affirmative vote of five of the members, and the site plan approval just requires a simple majority. So given that these two issues are front and center and they're somewhat diverse in terms of they're not interrelated at all, and they require a different number of votes, we would ask the board to consider bifurcating their vote and taking two separate votes. But with that said, let's talk about the Johnson Avenue for a moment. So what's been marked as R-2 is the original submission, and just showing that the sewer line would be on that portion of the road. I guess it would be on the eastern side of the road, western side of the road, I'm sorry. Johnson Avenue, closest to the site, so that we are not digging up the middle of the road to further support the applicant's position that he only wants to pave half of the roadway from property line to property line. And I think the R2 submission actually goes to the stop sign. Now, the civil engineer had a conflict this evening, but if there are questions on the plan that was submitted, Mr. Imparato, being in the construction industry, would certainly be have the ability to testify with regard to exhibit R-2. Again, so with that said, I just want to kind of go through some of the things I actually said during the reconsideration. So this is in our opinion, I believe we're supported by the law. This is an off-track improvement. It's not a site plan issue. And the law is clear. I had referenced, and I'll reference again for this particular hearing, the Dunkin' Donuts case versus Township of North Brunswick. And that holding was that it dealt with traffic issues, but really that holding really stands for that the board has no authority to deny a site plan application based on off-site conditions. And again, that dealt with traffic and needing, additional traffic lights, not for safety reasons, but for, just for the flow of traffic off-site. And this is an off-site condition. Now, the board can condition, it's not a basis for a denial, but the board can condition as part of hopefully an approval that the applicant do some paving. But as this board is aware, any condition placed on an applicant has to be reasonable. And sometimes the reasonableness is subjective. In this particular case, it's actually rooted in the town's ordinance. And it basically talks about that section 40 : that's the municipal land use law is 40:55D-42. And it says here, the governing body may by ordinance adopt regulations requiring a developer as a condition for approval of site plan to pay a pro rata share of the cost of providing only reasonable and necessary street improvements. So it's by ordinance, it's a pro rata share. It's got to be reasonable and necessary. And the borough's code does address off-track improvements at section 350-42.E.2. And it says that off-track improvements shall not include the improvement costs for substantial street construction or improvements unless said improvement is significantly affected by the site being developed. So that's a lot of questions that the board has to ask themselves. You know, is the installation of the sewer line, or now what's being proposed to be on the western side, is Johnson Avenue being significantly affected with that installation? And if it is, then you could condition the approval to be based on the repaving of that portion of Johnson Avenue. If you want to condition the approval based on paving curb to curve all of Johnson Avenue, I would submit that that's unreasonable. And it would have to then be a pro rata cost to the developer. The developer doesn't have to do it. He would pay the borough a pro rata cost, and then either the borough collects the balance from other property owners that benefit from that, or the borough kind of ponies up the rest to do that curb to curb. So it's got to be reasonable in nature, and it would be pro rata. And that's, and in my opinion, if it's a curb to curb condition. My client is stipulating and is willing to do half of Johnson Avenue, pave half of Johnson Avenue, lot line to lot line, or lot line to the stop sign. I guess it's a little bit beyond the lot line. So that's all I have with regard to this paving issue, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Behrens?
May I just add something on the paving issue with Mr. Sarlo, please?
Sure.
As Mr. Costa mentioned earlier, the town was out there today. Mason and I were out there today. People from my firm were out there a few weeks ago. We identified the open manhole. We measured where the manhole that would be covered. We spoke to Mr. Costa about it. We've been in discussion. There could be a possibility that there is actually a sanitary line that's running down the Johnson Avenue street. That all, as Mr. Costa said, that's being figured out right now, right? So it's a good thing that it's being figured out right now. I'm very happy about that, and I appreciate the town's efforts. So I just wanted to reiterate that we're actively looking to make things work. So, however, Mr. Sarlo, my counsel, would like to propose with the town. Like I said, I think our mainstay is height, and our amenity space is a big part of this height. And if we didn't have the amenity space, our height would be okay. And I think that amenity space is a big part of the future, as I mentioned, and we could gain another foot from the 1.7 inches that we talked about. So I just, time is a constraint here. As Mr. Merman said, he would like to end it at 10 o'clock. It is 9:21, and I think all of us have been going through this for a very long time. As I mentioned earlier, we love River Edge. We appreciate River Edge, and we would like to stay in River Edge as a company. But at this point, we really would like to just build this building as is, and we will work out with the town what we need to work out, and we're always there for the town.
Okay. Mr. Behrens, any questions, comments on you?
I don't think I do pertaining to the paving and utilities. I think as was mentioned, some of the fact finding is still under review. It's a bit beyond my domain, to be honest, so I don't have any.
Fair enough. Mr. Costa, I think you had mentioned the activities the town is undertaking at this point. Anything further to add from your perspective?
One sec, I'm having trouble unmuting. Mr. Chairman, one thing, Marina, just in case, based on Mr. Sarlo's synopsis, maybe you want to swear me in just in case this gets to a higher authority.
That's
Just
fine.
saying.
You're always under oath, but we can just put it on the
I think
record.
just for the record, all right?
All right. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Again, I, with all respect, I respectfully disagree. This isn't, the board isn't imposing an off-track improvement. This building needs to have a sewer, sanitary sewer. Based on the previous application, same engineer, same design engineer, Mr. Burton, same one you guys used, same design engineer. Where the previous applicant came in, demoed a building, never gave notice to the town. Whether or not there was a sewer on site or not on site, we personally don't know. My office was never involved. DPW was never involved. So we don't know if they cut it off, didn't cut it off. Obviously, there was a building there. Originally, it was a salon, it was a spa. I can't imagine that they didn't have a sewer. No one knows where it is, whether it's on your design team, and now the onus is on the town. I spoke to Mr. Imperato at length. He called my office. He called myself numerous times last week, this week. And again, we went out there today. This building, if it's built, needs a sanitary sewer. Whether it goes down the center of the street, whether it goes to the westerly side of the street, wherever it goes, there's going to be damage between point A and possibly point B, Grand Avenue, down Johnson. So until we figure out exactly what's going on, which will take place tomorrow, but this isn't an off-track improvement. This is a necessity if you want to build on that lot, because the previous applicants demoed a building and didn't do it properly. That's reality. So right now, the proposal is to go from Grand to Main Street and pave one half of the roadway. But quite frankly, you really don't even know where the sanitary sewer is going because we don't know where it is. There's a possibility of a BCUA line that isn't shown on the plan. There's an 18-inch pipe that's out there. There's a 10-inch pipe that's out there. There's different inverts. There's a 10-inch or an 8-inch line coming across. There's old mapping from BCUA that we found and got a hold of, and it goes the opposite direction. So until we know, you don't know where you're tying into. So it's an open item. The proposal tonight is to pave one half of the road. That's your proposal from Grand Avenue to Main Street. The board didn't ask for that. That's what you guys are volunteering. But the bottom line is if you do damage to the street, you need to fix the street. And quite frankly, as of tonight, you don't know exactly where you're going. And I said, this is ongoing. My personal opinion has nothing to do with the board. Town is now involved. We're going to figure out within the next few days, where's the sanitary sewer? Where does it go? If we can find the old one, then he can tie into it and there'll be no damage to the street and move on. But that shouldn't premise anybody's vote this evening, whether or not the road gets paved or doesn't get paved. And I don't want to belabor the point. The issue is, do you need a D variance? You got the height, you said it on the record, you can't change it. It's 13 feet floor to floor, and that's the end of the story. And if the board votes yes, then we'll figure out the engineering and how to get this, the sanitary sewer into a building so the building can operate and have people in it. Period, end of story.
And if I may, thank you, Bob. Ms. Finley, so we're here to work with the town. There's open issues with the road, and we really would like to just concentrate on the height variance. I feel very strongly that we Dark Star Development, the Imperatos, and River Edge will work out the situation on the road. That's where I felt very strongly when you looked at the one side, it was completely paved a certain amount of years ago, and the side where we're building was very deteriorated. up until the Main Street stop sign. That's where we offered, okay, let's move the sewer. Everything's going up along our curb line. And then we will pave to the stop sign to PNC Bank. So we didn't have to do that, but we did that because we felt that the aesthetics of Johnson Avenue would look much better with the road being paved straight from corner to corner. So that was really our criteria there. I understand exactly where Mr. Costa and his firm is at. I understand exactly where the town is at. And I'm really happy that we were able to get out there today and really start the dialogue going on to really figure out what is going on. So I just wanted to add that it's not like we're saying no, but it's still an open issue.
So,
Thank
so
you.
you would agree to work with the borough engineer regarding the sewer issue and paving?
Absolutely.
Any
I just-
questions from the board?
I just want to add one more, I just have one question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I was gonna go around, but we'll start
It-
with you, Mr. Arkelian.
In that agreement, would you agree that Mr. Costa, the borough engineer, be the final arbiter on what happens there?
No choice.
Paul,
Are you asking?
I'm asking you. You
You're
just said
asking
that
me?
you would work with, yeah, you just said you would work with Mr. Costa, you would work with the town, make sure everything is done right. I'm asking if if we put it into the approval that Mr. Costa is the final arbiter or his company on what gets repaired or what gets repaved on the road. Because that's what you said.
So I think the word reasonable is a very important word here. And I'm gonna divert to council here, because that's what he's here for. But I think a reasonable request and working with the town has always been our most important objective. But an unreasonable account where possibly where we thought that paving the entire road was unreasonable is where we brought it up. I mean, Jim, I can't just go and open up a blanket there. If there's a sanitary sewer line and we're connecting to it in the middle of the road, you know, I mean, we want that street. We're all about beautification. Look at Atkinson Street. We're all about it. You know, look at our properties in River Edge. You know, we don't want our place to look bad, but I'm not going to say to you, yeah, it's all about, we can repave every road from corner to corner. If we rip it up and it looks like crap and we did it, yeah, we'll repave it. But I think it's reasonable.
And I think what I was asking was reasonable because I've known Mr. Costa for the better part of 20 years and he's always been reasonable. And he represents what's best for the town. I've never seen him go far and beyond on any applicant. I've been on this board for 26 years and I've never had anybody come up to me and said, Mr. Costa did this and Mr. Costa made me do that. I believe Mr. Costa is going to be fair. He's going to be honest. He's going to take into consideration the person you are and what you've done for the town in the past, as we all are tonight. But I think at the end of the day, Mr. Costa is a fair person. And I believe that he should be the final arbiter. He is our professional. He's the guy that's giving us, and you should appreciate what Mr. Costa does because he also looks out for the beautification of the town. So you
No
both
question.
work hand in hand,
No
both working
question.
hand in hand for what's best for the town.
No question. But
So then you agree.
reasonableness is a fair word that to be introduced into what you're
It's also a
asking.
very arbitrary word.
Well, Charles,
Everybody has
I'll
their own.
deter to
everybody has their own
council
idea of
here.
what's reasonable. Mhm.
Listen, Mr. Merman's gonna be very upset at 10 o'clock, so we got 29 minutes.
I think Mr. Merman agrees with me 100%. Mr. Merman?
Of course, Mr. Costas serves the town quite well. I've worked with him on many occasions and never questions his ability and fairness.
I'm not questioning Mr. Costa's reasonable fairness, and Mr. Costa is an extremely reasonable person, and I've known Mr. Costa probably a good 35 to 40 years, probably going on 40. So I'm not, I
No,
am
he
not
was 40.
questioning that. I am just stating that the word reasonable. That's all I'm saying here.
And just as
So-
some insight for all of our resolutions where we ask the applicant to work with the borough engineer and construction department, it's all always within the reasonable
exactly right.
recommendations of the board, of the borough engineer. So I
That's
think
exactly
Mr.
right.
Costa? I'm sorry, Mr. Costa, you're still under oath. Do you agree to be reasonable?
Through the chair. To Sarah Kalian, again, I'm not asking this applicant to pave Route 4 from here to the George Washington Bridge. The bottom line is, if you wreck the road, fix the road. That's it.
Exactly.
That's it. There's no.
That's it.
There's.
Then we have
again,
an
that's it.
agreement.
You can debate this all night.
Let-
This is not the straw that's gonna break a camel's back. The board
Exactly.
has to deliberate and say, here's the building, this is what it looks like, it's aesthetically pleasing, can you live with the height or not? And that's it. And I think we can belabor this all night. Mr. Sarlo's gonna get up. I think he closed. I don't know if there's any more case history that's coming out this evening. I don't know. But you know what? Tomorrow morning, anybody that wants to go to Grand Avenue and Johnson Avenue, you will see activity and we will get to the bottom of the sewer, one way or another. So as far as everybody on this board, do not be concerned about that aspect of it. Have your scale out, weigh it, and whether or not this project makes sense for the town or whether this project doesn't. Whether Mr. Imperato is a nice guy, he knows me 40 years, that just reinforces my age. So 2 applications tonight, and now my age is reinforced once again. Period, end of story. But again, Mr. Burns can say, planners are here, this is that, the application is this. It's 50 feet, 51 feet, whatever the number is. They're gonna pave half the roadway. They're gonna work with us. We'll find the sewer. We'll get it sewered if this passes one way or another. Bottom line, you guys make a decision. Otherwise, I think we can talk about it till probably 1, 2, 3 in the morning.
It's gonna be the nicest property and the nicest street in River Edge. So the
And I wanna-
reasonable
again,
is the,
It's
we're all
up to
about
the, again, it's up to the board. The
Let
only
me-
thing I can say, I don't know if the architect is around, but he might have quit already too.
Nah,
I
he's
don't know. I
here.
don't see him on the screen. He was flipped around upside down before. Here he is.
There's a smile.
I'm here.
He was doing
All right,
yoga.
the only question I have, and again, I'm gonna put on another hat. Are these plenum ceilings? You need 13 feet floor to floor. Are they plenum ceilings and that's why you need the space?
There'll be ducted returns. So we
there's
need the
ducted-
space for
There's
the
ducted return.
larger stuff work. Correct.
All right, so you're gonna hide that in that 3-foot set between the beams or what? So you're anticipating?
That is the plan. The plan is
Alright.
to have ducts and sprinkler piping all concealed within the drop ceiling.
Understood. So it's steel, Q-deck, concrete floors, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right, and I mentioned, I'm sorry, Bob, I did
Yeah.
mention asphalt underneath. We're probably gonna be pouring concrete on that point.
No, I'm saying it's Q-decking, it's a steel building, Q-deck, concrete.
Yes.
Yes.
Can you go to flat plate construction to save a little room?
It would, the slab would get thicker, but you'd still have the space that you're gonna need for the
Slab could be
ductwork
8
and spring.
inches, right? Slab is
Huh?
8 inches maybe? All I'm trying to
Yeah,
say
but now the
is the
slab,
concern on some
now
of
the
the board
slab would only
members
be
is height.
4 inches.
Could you go to
What's
that?
that?
And the only reason I'm saying it, 2 things happen. Speed, and whether or not Mr. Imperato saw it today, maybe it doesn't matter. Interest rates went up again, 25 basis. First problem. Second problem is steel, shop drawings, nonsense, this, that, and the other thing. 3 feet, 3 floors, that's 10 feet of additional everything on the outside. That's all adds up to dollars. If height is an issue, can you go to something else and bring it down? That's all I'm gonna say. I'm done for this evening. Mr. Chairman, if you want any more questions answered, I'm on mute.
All right, what I would like to do is just go around the board for questions the board might have regarding the paving question that's been submitted here. Start, Mr. Eric Kelly has already given his perspective. Mr. Gibbons?
I don't necessarily have a question. I just want to reiterate, I think what Mr. Arakilian said, it basically, if you break the road, you got to fix the road. And we as a board trust Mr. Costa. So, you know, if he says that that road needs to be fixed at the end of this project, it's going to need to be fixed. And we all know he's reasonable. So I'm just reiterating what was said by others. I concur, you know, if any damage to that road is done by the applicant, it needs to get fixed. And if it wasn't done by the applicant, then, you know, we'll fix that. We'll figure that out. But just agreeing with my other board members. That's all I have.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Gibbons. Ms. Boland?
No, I have no comment.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pfeffer?
Nothing further from me.
Okay, Mr. Cray?
No comments, no questions.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bustede?
No additional questions. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Mr. Sarlo, anything further from you?
No, Mr. Chairman, I think both sides adequately stated their case. I think there is a compromise on several of the issues, or the two issues that were kind of in front of the board this evening. So again, we thank you for your time and consideration. And if the board does want to vote separately on the two issues, that's fine. If they want to lump it all together, that's fine also.
All right. Before I come back to that, Mr. Mertman, I'm sorry, I was remiss not including you in any questions on the paving.
I have no questions on that item, but I have your ear. Do we have to go out for public comment?
That's what I'm going to do next. I wanted to come to you
Okay.
first before doing that. So,
Thank you.
okay. Ms. Snively, do we have anybody in the public for this evening?
Yes, we do.
Okay, then in that case, I'll entertain a motion to open the meeting to the public for comments on this application.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. May I have a second?
Second.
I think I heard Ms. Boland, all in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Any opposed, any abstain? Okay, at this
Mr. Chair-
time, we are
Chairman?
now,
I'm sorry, can I just suggest as the mayor and council does, give a 3-minute to anybody that wants to speak from the public, limit them to the 3 minutes that the borough council does?
thank you for the reminder. Yes, we're going to ask for the time limitations on any comments from the public to that effect for this evening on this particular application only, and just on this evening's testimony. So, Ms. Steinle, do we have anybody in the
Yes,
public?
we do. If you have a comment or question, you can please raise your hand on Zoom or dial *9 on your phone. All right. Okay. I saw Ms. Filer Fluger first, so here we go. All right, and if you just state your name and your town of residence for the record.
Hi, Lori Filer Fluger, River Edge, New Jersey.
Thank you.
Quick question. Hello, everyone. Are we making comments just about everything in general with the application, or just specific to the paving part we were just finishing?
Just what was discussed tonight, any questions or comments, and I would just recommend that you ask all your questions at once and we'll answer them.
Okay, one thing, Dr. Landman, who is the eye doctor guy at 63 Grand Ave, he couldn't attend this meeting, so he asked me to read something. May I do so from him?
That's fine.
Okay, I'm reading from a text that Dr. Dan Landman sent me at 63 Grand Ave, Suite 137. He says, to the town officials, I would kindly ask that you address the issue of possible noise pollution. At the May 10th meeting, my understanding was that the issue of noise pollution was going to be deferred to existing town ordinances. When I looked up the town ordinances, I found the following section 152-7 noise, which states that businesses adjacent to residential lots are not permitted to make noise between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. However, I would ask that there be language stating that the noise is limited during business hours, i.e. 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., given that there is likely to be a party on the rooftop with alcohol and that may disturb other businesses. Lastly, will there be limitations on the number of people allowed on the roof? For instance, what about potential clients of the businesses? A nightclub patron is considered a client. Thank you, Dan Landman. End quote.
So I
I promised to my
believe all of those questions, concerns were addressed at the initial hearing, and any conditions that were discussed at the initial hearing would also apply today unless otherwise revised.
Okay. I just promised him I would read that, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think we have one more person.
All right. And then Dr. Filer. And if you just state your name and provide your town of residence.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. Dr. Ken Weiler, residence, no, my building is, my business address is 1060 Main Street. My home address is 805 Amaryllis in Oradell, New Jersey. And I just wanted to ask a couple of things. Number one, I wasn't clear tonight about tomorrow. Did you say there's going to be something occurring tomorrow on the street on Johnson Ave at the corner of Grand Avenue tomorrow? Is this just a meeting or is there going to be some type of construction going on?
If I can, to the chair, it's not going to be construction. We're going to locate a couple manholes on Grand Avenue. It will not impact you because from our understanding, your sewer goes out to Main Street, so you're going to have no impact.
Oh, okay, so the streets won't be closed or anything like that.
No.
Just wanted to aware of
A
that.
portion of Grand might be closed, obviously, when we're in there trying to find the manholes and ultimately find them, reset them and bring them to the surface. So there's going to be some equipment down there and we're going to TV some lines, but we're not tearing up the roadway. We're not going up Johnson Avenue, so to speak. Other than having some camera trucks out there, that would be it. Should be, if there's minimal impact to you. If there's any impact, I'll be out there. Probably one of my engineers will be out there. If there's any issues, doctor, certainly come out, talk to me, but I will try to make absolutely sure that you're not affected by any stretch of the imagination.
I'll be there tomorrow. I'll be at our building tomorrow.
You got it.
I'll come out and say hello if I
And
can.
again, I will certainly come over and say hi to you. And if you need anything from us, I'll certainly provide, anything you need. Certainly, we don't want to impact your business in the morning at all.
Yeah, no, just for information. I just wanted to know.
No problem.
And otherwise, we all the things that were mentioned before, I still stand, just as, of course, noise and anything. I'm sure that Paul wants to make sure that everything is great. And I know the board wants to make sure everything's great as far as how it affects all the businesses and people that use that area of the town. So I just want to make sure that we were kept abreast and that everything will work out really nicely. Is this just a point of information again? So tonight you're just dealing with the height variance of the building and the street and the sewer situation. Nothing else about the building is being discussed tonight or to be voted on?
This is a reconsideration of the application. The reconsideration was to allow the applicant to address issues related to the height and the paving, but the board will make a final determination on the application as a whole based on these changes and clarifications.
Okay, thank you. That's all at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't think we have anybody further. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to close to the public.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Givens. I have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cray. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Okay, we are now closed to the public. So I want to revisit a procedural matter that Mr. Sarlo had made a request to bifurcate the applications at this point. Ms. Steinle?
So the applicant is permitted to request a bifurcation of a D variance from the site plan application, but the board has the authority to determine not to permit such bifurcation. So it's up to the board if they want to take two separate votes or just everything all at once.
Okay. Comments from the
Jeremy,
board? Mr. Merman?
I was going to ask if you need a motion to consider bifurcation, but if you want to poll the board first, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I want to hear what the board's perspective is for bifurcation, and then we'll
I
proceed
just
accordingly.
have a question, man. What exactly does that mean? You know, so what are we splitting? And if we were to vote one way, like what exactly would we be voting for? If you could explain this to a non-lawyer.
So yes, so the bifurcation would mean that the board would take a separate vote on whether to permit the D6 height variance as what is presented. That would be one separate vote. It requires its own number of votes to pass. The second vote would be on the site plan. The applicant was requesting various variances for setbacks of the building. So that vote would be to approve all of those other bulk variance requests, save the height.
Okay, so if we vote to allow the site plan and not the height variance, they would basically need to come up with a building that fits our height variance, essentially.
Yes,
Is that in simple terms?
that's my understanding, unless Mr. Sarlo has any objection to that.
Yeah, no, that's correct. They're bifurcating the D variance.
Okay, I just want to know what exactly each vote would be. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, fair enough, fair enough. Mr. Cray?
No questions, no issues about that.
Okay. Anybody else on the board? Questions on the bifurcation process or otherwise statements? Mr. Pfeffer?
No, I mean, personally, I think we've gotten so much information that we're perfectly capable of voting once on the whole application. But if people feel that they want to take a separate vote, that's fine too.
Okay. All right, no further comments or questions on bifurcation.
I have one. You didn't ask me.
I
Shame
asked the
on you.
board. I said, who else has questions?
Well,
But please
all right.
proceed.
All right, my opinion on bifurcation is, no, don't consider it this time. Our purpose here tonight is to consider the previous application, previous memorialization. And I think that's what we should address tonight as one lump sum. If the applicant decides to come back and make another application, it is bifurcated, that's his a prerogative. So basically I say, my opinion is vote on what we originally proposed to memorialize.
Okay, Ms. Boland?
I don't really have an opinion. I'd leave it up to the board on the bifurcation.
Okay. Any further comments from the board on bifurcation questions before we move on it? Okay. Then at this time, I'll entertain a motion on the request to bifurcate the application into a separate site plan approval and a separate D6 variance approval.
Moved.
Mr. Cray is moved. Is there a second?
We'll need a second. You don't necessarily have to vote yes to bifurcate if you second.
I'll second.
Okay.
So if
Need a
you,
second from Mr. Gibbons. So Mr. Cray and Mr. Gibbons.
okay. If you vote yes, on this, you are voting to have a bifurcated D variance and site plan vote. If that's understood.
Is everyone clear on what we're voting on at this point right now? Yes?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay. All right, Mr. Caslin,
yes.
Ms. Boland,
Can I wait for the, well, yes.
okay. Mr. Merman,
No,
Mr. Pfeffer,
No,
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
No,
Mr. Gibbons.
Yes.
All right, the vote, and Mr. Bastide. All right,
No.
okay, so the motion does pass.
the motion what?
The motion passes. Mr. Bastide, we always take his vote, but tonight his alternate vote does not count.
Oh. Okay. Oh, well.
Okay, so we now have a bifurcated application. And at this time, we'll take motions or take action on the site plan first and then the site on the D6 variance. Okay, Ms. Snidely, could you just remind us what the conditions are at this point?
The conditions on the on the site plan or on,
On the site plan.
okay. One moment. All right. So I have to go through my notes. There will be no underground parking on the property. The building will be sprinklered and the parking area will be sprinklered if required. The backlit signs will be turned off pursuant to borough requirements. The building will be fully sprinklered. Standpipe outlets will be installed in stairs and of all floors. The zoning table will be updated to reflect all of the variants requested. The board will retain jurisdiction over sound, lighting, odors for 6 months after the issuance of certificate of occupancy if issues arise. The applicant will confirm the number of HVAC units. So I have additional site plan requirements if the D variance is granted for the rooftop. So I'll include those as well, but those would be only limited to if the height variance is granted. Sound and lighting on the rooftop will be turned off when out of use. The hours of the rooftop will be no later than 10 p.m. and the maximum capacity of the rooftop will be no more than 40 people. The applicant will comply with NJDEP and Borough Code compliance with noise. Furniture cushions will be secured and or stored when not in use. The applicant will obtain a renewal permit for the sewer lateral and will repave half of the road where the sewer improvements disturb pavements and will work with the borough engineer to address sewer and paving issues. There will be a new sewer main and lateral installed. The applicant agrees to all other conditions and reasonable recommendations in the engineering report and planning reports. There will be a drainage improvement and detention system installed. And the applicant will confirm the lighting installed on any roof. And will reduce the height of the lighting and the lighting Kelvin to 3,500, I believe. That will have to be confirmed with the board planner. And then I believe the applicant confirmed that the fire truck sizes with the River Edge Fire Chief. And the applicant will enter into an agreement with the mayor and council to connect the storm sewer system all conditions in the prior resolution that are not inconsistent with this resolution will also be applicable. And the applicant will be required to comply with the non-residential development fee or any affordable housing requirements as applicable. I think that was everything that was previously discussed.
Okay,
So that would be related to the site plan, with the exception of the rooftop.
okay. So the first item we're taking action on then is the site plan approval. And I'll open it to a motion on that element of the application.
Move to approve with the conditions that were cited by Ms. Steinle.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cried. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Pfeffer. Okay, Ms. Steinle, when you're ready.
All right. So this is just for the site plan with the conditions. All right, Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Ms. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
No.
Mr. Pfeffer,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
No.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
and Mr. Bastide.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. The next action
Thank
then
you.
is on the D6 on the height variance. I'll entertain a motion on that aspect, please.
Let me try that, Mr. Chairman.
If you would, Mr. Merman.
I'm gonna have to try to amend what I originally had. Having heard the original application, and having heard Mr. Sarlo's reconsideration, it's my motion that the other items pertaining to the especially the D application be that we disapprove the portions relating to the height variance and similar. That's it. In other words, I'm suggesting that the height variance itself be disallowed.
Okay, so your motion is for disapproval of the height variance.
Correct.
Okay. Is there a second to Mr. Merman's motion?
Mr. Chairman, if there's no second to a motion, then the motion fails, right? Then we move on to the next motion.
We need a second
Need a
to the
second.
motion, and you don't have to vote in favor of the motion to second it.
No. Counselor, I respectfully disagree. I agree with Mr. Pfeffer. If there's a motion on the table and there's no second, the motion dies on the table.
If we're going by Robert's rules, that would be the procedure.
I
Okay,
can,
then we have to confirm that the motion is void before any additional motion is presented, because you cannot have two motions at the same time.
But if there's no second, then you don't have a motion on the table. There's no other motion.
Does that mean you're automatically approving a D variance?
No. Your motion to disapprove does not have a second. So we can't take
Oh.
action on the motion to disapprove.
Oh, okay, I got it. So let me amend my motion. All right, so we need a positive motion and we can vote against it. Is that what we're saying?
I don't think
Well-
that, so
So-
the motion
so,
was not
can I just
seconded.
interject? Can I just interject for a second? On Robert's rules, if there's no second on the motion, you can't amend that particular motion. That motion has to fail. And it has to be, it has to just go by the wayside, like Mr. Pfeffer said. And then a new motion be made.
Okay,
And again, I'm gonna go back to, when I was the chairperson a few years ago. And that the motion has to be made and affirm, and then it can be voted down. You can't have a motion to deny. So I would ask Mr. Merman to withdraw his motion so we can have a new motion.
if Marina, is it okay for me to withdraw the motion?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so I'll withdraw that motion and make another motion. I will make a motion that we approve the remaining portion of the consideration of the application that refers to the D variance. Is that acceptable?
So the motion is to approve the D6 height variance.
Correct.
Second.
Fine.
Okay, I think all right, so we've toss up between Mr. Pfeffer and Mr. Craig. We'll go with Mr. Pfeffer. I think I heard you first.
He's prettier than me.
No way.
Well, it's 10:05. Good night, everybody.
I got 10:02, Jim. I think your clock's a little fast.
You beat me to it. I thought of that joke too.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna second the motion of Mr. Merman.
I think we have a second from Mr. Pfeffer on the floor already.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Sorry.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Okay. So I'm only going to call those eligible to vote. Mr. Bastide is not seated to vote tonight, just to avoid confusion. So if you're voting yes on this motion, you're voting to approve the D6 height variance as presented tonight. Okay. Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Ms. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
No,
Mr. Pfeffer,
Yes.
Mr. Craig.
right.
No.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Hold on.
No,
Mr. Kellion,
So again, I'm gonna reiterate the reason for my voting. I think it's a beautiful building. I think this has been a very difficult application. And for the reason that I think it's gonna be a nice addition to our downtown, I'm gonna vote yes.
Thank you.
all right, and Mr. Gibbons.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much.
All right, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really
Um,
appreciate it.
Thank you.
but
Now go home.
That was our last item on the agenda this evening. I appreciate everybody's indulgence for toughing this one out. We're glad to see we did manage to get just a little bit over the 10 o'clock curfew, but thank you for everybody's courtesies moving through the process.
And I would just like to thank everybody for their time and talent. Thank you.
Before we break, any further comments, new items from the board?
I have a comment.
Mr. Alter?
Yes, just to let everybody know that both meetings in August are canceled. There will be no board meeting in August. The next meeting will be September 13th.
So summer vacations officially started.
Good. I wasn't making either one of them anyway.
All right. Well, with that, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. I will entertain a motion to close the meeting, please.
So moved.
Good night.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Gibbons. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Everybody enjoy your summer. It
Stay
was great
adjourned.
working with you guys tonight.
Happy summer, everyone.
Good night.
Why this board is one of the best in Berlin. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Take care.
Good night.